Hello, it's Jerri Ward. I'm back with Tim Lambert, the President and Executive Director of the Texas Homeschool Coalition. And Tim, before we get back into it, why don't you give folks the URL of your of the coalition's website so that they can go and look at your website and look at the great resources you have there?
Well, Jerri, I'd be glad to do that. Our website is www.thsc.org. That's Texas Homeschool Coalition.org.
And that's where they can sign up for your quarterly magazine.
That's right. We have a quarterly magazine. We also have a couple of weekly e-newsletters. One is on homeschool stuff, and the other one's on political issues, where we're keeping up with some of the issues that we're talking about today.
And why don't you describe briefly some of the benefits of membership in the Coalition for Homeschooling Families, and then we'll get back into the issues.
Well, one of the things that we do, Jerri, for our members, we have a whole array of membership benefits, similar to kind of what AAA does, discounts and special membership benefits and that sort of thing. But we also have legal assistance related to homeschool issues for our members. Our general counsel is Shelby Sharp, who was the lead attorney in the Leaper versus Arlington ISD case back in the 80s. And so we have what we euphemistically call in our office a ministry to CPS workers and superintendents and principals and those people who either don't know what the law is about homeschooling or choose to push the envelope. And so I generally write a letter and offer to sue them, and they generally decide maybe that they should leave our people alone. So that's one of the things we do. Jerri, we're also working I mentioned I was appointed by the governor to the Parental Advisory Committee for CPS, so we're trying to work with the agency to address some of these issues. And then we're also working with a couple of attorneys, doing a continuing legal education seminar where we are training attorneys to defend innocent families against CPS and trying to build a database of those attorneys to help families.
And you also have legislative efforts ongoing?
That is correct. We have a political action committee, so in the campaign years we educate legislators about our issues or candidates. We've got about 24 legislators who have agreed to support our legislation in the next session. We're going to call it the Texas Parental Rights and Restoration Act, which is designed to amend the grandparent access statute that's been used to abuse parents. And then during the legislative years, we have an active lobbying process in Austin.
Well, it sounds like it's about time, given the FLDS situation and the fact that CPS is still harassing homeschoolers, that their wings need to be cut back at the legislature. Do you agree?
I would like to break them off, not just clip them back.
Well, do you think that you have more ammunition now with what's going on out in El Dorado, especially since the Third Court of Appeals conditionally granted a writ of mandamus against the judge who ordered all those kids picked up?
Jerri, I do. In fact, what this reminded me of, we were talking about this situation where, the state has been arguing that they were, rescuing children and all this kind of stuff, and their case has been incrementally falling apart. And now the third court has basically told the CPS that they have to return the children of these 48 mothers. Jerri, this reminded me of that situation in Tulia some years ago where a district attorney there basically violated the rights of a whole bunch of minority people in a bogus drug case where a lot of minority people were prosecuted and put in jail, and ultimately that was all overturned, and the DA was actually prosecuted for that. So I actually hope something like that happens to this DA down in Tom Green County who facilitated all of this.
Well, there's some grounds for that, given that she stepped outside her designated duties and directed the investigation of some of these women involved in this, and you know something about that. Why don't you talk about that?
Specifically, what are we talking about there?
Well, what we're talking about is the fact that they kept some of these women that they knew were adults because they had driver's licenses and birth certificates.
Well, exactly.
To interrogate them.
Jerri, what's interesting is that there was an op-ed piece that you saw and I saw that when this case first hit, where this guy pointed out that they had 5 underage mothers here that they were hanging their hat on. And this guy's argument, I think it's a valid one. You could go into almost any community in Texas and find 5 underage mothers. And the very next week, CPS came out and said, actually, we think we have 25 to 31 of these mothers. And what they had done is they had redesignated some of these people who said they were adults as minors. And there was an article in the Houston Chronicle yesterday in which some of the attorneys representing these young girls or these ladies argued that they think this was done intentionally so that they could interrogate these ladies without an attorney present. And some of these ladies asked for an attorney and were declined an attorney. And now I understand today they're about ready to say, actually there's about 17 of these ladies who are actually adults. One of them is 27 years old. And as I read through the transcript of that 14-day hearing, Jerry, I was appalled to hear to read the transcript of the judge denying one of these girls who presented her birth certificate and driver's license, and the judge denied that as a means to prove that she was an adult.
Well, and just to clarify everything, what happened, and just to reiterate, is they used this means to keep custody and to keep these women detained and to deny them access to an attorney on the grounds that they were a minor, so that they could interrogate them and go on a fishing expedition to find whatever they could without an attorney present for these ladies. And,
exactly. And
my understanding, according to some of the attorneys for the ladies, is this was directed by the district attorney of Tom Green County, and that's similar to what Mike Nifong did over in Durham,
North Carolina.
North Carolina, when he stepped out of his role as a prosecutor and directed the investigation there with the photo lineup, and he's in big trouble. He got disbarred.
He's been disbarred, and now he's the focus of a civil suit. And if I were the attorney in Tom Green County, I'd be a little concerned right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't step outside the bounds if you want to maintain, your legal protections. Well, that's just disgusting. But why don't we draw the parallels between what's happened there and what happens to homeschoolers? Because my understanding from reading the press accounts is that one of the reasons CPS went on this fishing expedition is they used the excuse, well, we can't tell what's going on there because they homeschool.
Well, Jerry, that's how we initially got involved. I had a friend who called me. He told me he heard the county sheriff in a radio interview saying that the reason they couldn't get at these people, quote unquote, is because they were homeschooling. And his point was, if they had been in a public school, as I mentioned earlier, they could have just gone and got the kids. But now they had to have a court order. And, what we saw, as you know, Jerry, in these, we made the argument right away that this is not a homeschool case. We had people who always think that the government should regulate private schools and homeschools try to make the argument that this is evidence that homeschooling needs to be regulated. And, of course, that's a whole different topic, but there's really no justification for regulating private schools, including homeschools. But the point that happened here is we saw in just this week that the agreement that the CPS wanted these families to sign, one of those things was related to education. And they wanted these people to sign a thing saying they would allow their children to have academic assessments and follow whatever educational professionals recommended. And, of course, as a homeschool leader, that threw all kinds of red flags up to me, that what you're really saying, if you sign that, is if you have some kind of educational expert that says my kid should be in a public school, then that's what I'll do. And in news stories that I read, Jerry, there were other of those cases where they were limiting the religious material that these people could have, the students could have. and they were very clearly concerned about what these people were teaching their children from a religious standpoint, and they wanted to limit that.
Well, and that gets into the question about the clash of worldviews between these Christians and the bureaucrats in CPS, because, I live in Austin, Texas, where there's a lot of bureaucrats, and I can tell you right now that with many of them, their worldview is very outside even the mainstream worldview. I mean, what has been your observations about the differences in worldview between your Christian homeschoolers and these CPS bureaucrats?
Jerry, I can tell you that this doesn't apply obviously to every CPS worker, but I think the majority of them, if they know that a family is a Christian family, they believe the Bible, they believe in spanking, and they homeschool, that they're about 80% there to believing these people must be closet abusers, and they approach that investigation with the same fervor that we saw in El Dorado, thinking these people have got to be guilty. Let me just find the evidence to support that.
Well, let me tell you, I recently read a sermon by Rousas Rushdoony, the great Reformed theologian, who was an expert witness in Leaper and had a lot of effect. He was also an expert witness in a case in the 1980s here in Austin, Texas, that involved some pastors of a church that taught the book, including Spare the Rod, Spoil the Child. And they were being prosecuted for, I guess, facilitating child abuse, because there was no direct allegations that they had ever abused anyone. And what Rushdoony wrote in his sermon was that the attorney for the state actually got in front of the jury during his argument, held up the Holy Bible, and said, "This is a manual for child abuse." So that's the kind of worldview that we're up against with these state bureaucrats that want to impose their secular beliefs on Christian families. And I'll tell you, it will always, the biggest fight will not be between Christian and Muslim. The biggest fight will always be Christians against the state. Do you agree with me?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with that. And I think what we saw in this situation was exactly that. While they continue, as you say, to repeat the mantra that this is not about religion, it very clearly is. And the fact that even Ben Stein, who did that great documentary about Expelled recently on CBS, and nationally said, "Where's the evidence of child abuse here?" And obviously they didn't have any.
Well, I can tell you, I don't see any, and, I think we have a mess here, and we'll just have to see how it happens, but I hope it serves as ammunition to how did you put it about CPS? What do you want to do with them?
We need to push back legislatively. We need to go to the legislature, and we need to enact some legislation to protect parents and give them some due process and deal with these CPS workers who go beyond their authority.
And all the listeners out there in other states, you need to do that too. I want to thank Tim Lambert for being with me today. It was very informative, Tim, and good luck in your efforts in clipping CPS's wings. Thanks for being with me.
Thank you.